Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I rise to speak to Amendment 1A for this reason. As I understand the rules, if 1A is defeated, then we will be able to vote on 1B, which I have proposed. And I call your attention, there have been multiple drafts of 1B. The one that is the appropriate draft says 1B and has a check mark in the corner. And it amends the amendment by ensuring that the language that the Senate voted for on last night, or 2 nights ago, that would restrict the police state elements of this law substantially. And it would prevent lawful people from being caught up in the net that we are creating. It would prevent people from being caught up because of taillights being out on their car, because of routine traffic violations, and it would limit the police powers of this new law just to those instances in which the person is a suspect in a felony or commits a felony. And I would urge you to support, to vote against Amendment 1A so that we can adopt Amendment 1B and take the same position, the same strong pro-business position that the Senate took 2 nights ago. This body voted 31-17 2 nights ago to limit the police powers of this bill in this way. And it was a good idea then, it's a good idea now. Nothing has changed. And it is very important to the business community in this state, to me, to you, and to your children, that our state sends a clear message that we are not trying to capture legal Americans in this process. We are not trying to harass legal Americans in this process, and we don't want to risk that. We don't want to send that message in any way. And we don't want to put on the backs of law enforcement the obligation of distinguishing between, as Senator from the 21st mentioned, we don't want people to have to raise suspicions or determine things on the basis of national origin or anything else. And there are people in my party with whom I disagree with regard to this. There are people from the other party with whom I disagree. But we are unified as a group of folks who care about Georgia, who care to say that this state is not the kind of state that wants to catch legal citizens in this net over and over and over again in a discriminatory way. Senator from the 45th, who I have great respect for, talked to this amendment briefly. And I want to be very clear. Under the current federal law and under the law in virtually any jurisdiction in this state that wants it, if somebody is booked into jail, they can have their immigration status checked now, today. So we are not talking about folks that go to jail. We are talking about whether or not you're talking about routine traffic violations and other things that would not land you in jail, not a DUI. Not something else. The question is, what type of discretion do we give and what type of pressure do we put on our local law enforcement to enforce the federal immigration laws in a way that is going to be incredibly burdensome from them and incredibly burdensome on the legal American population of this state? I would also like to mention one thing. I'm glad that we have spent time over the last few days talking about this. And I'm glad that the senator from the 30th has done such a thorough job with his amendment in the phase-in process with regard to E-Verify. And many other people, the senator from the 27th has spent an enormous amount of time, and I recognize the representative from the 72nd as well, as did the senator from the 21st, that people have spent time and thought about this process. But I will say one final thing. To the extent that this bill has caused controversy, to the extent that there are people in this building and in this state who know that this bill will kill jobs, or who are fearful that it will, that know that this will have a reputational impact on our state, the one aspect of this bill that we cannot undo is the reputational damage to our state that would come from passing and from agreeing to put a police state in force to enforce what is undeniably a broken federal system. That is the one aspect of this law. That reputational damage cannot be undone. And that is why the business community is in the hallways, is in the streets, and is everywhere they can be to let folks in this room know that we cannot turn back in this regard. We can turn back in various other ways, but we cannot turn back. And let me say this, Arizona has tried. The senator from the 45th mentioned and quoted a press release from Russell Pierce, who's the president of the Senate in Arizona. He introduced 5 bills this year, 5 bills in the Arizona dealing with immigration. Every one of them was defeated by the Arizona Senate, voting against the president of their Senate. The following states have considered the similar police state law that we're voting on. Colorado, Kansas, Kentucky, Nebraska, and Mississippi have all turned back from this element, this one element. And so I'm asking you to do what we did the other night. We made our business community proud. We made the next generation of Georgians proud by voting to say we do not want a police state that captures legal people. We do not want to put that pressure on our local law enforcement, and we do not want to have the reputational damage to our state, to our big, important parts of our country. We don't want to deepen the Savannah Harbor and then have people from Panama and that come through that canal say they don't want to come here. So I urge you to vote no on Amendment 1A, and to vote yes then on Amendment 1B. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.